Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in today. My name is Cherise, and I am going to just give a brief discussion of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras entitled Sadhana Pada, which also refers to the practice of yoga. This chapter focuses on helping us realize how to deal with mental suffering or how to release the mental suffering that we have. Now, there are all types of suffering that we experience in life, but this particular chapter discusses ways of dealing with mental and emotional suffering. Some of the suffering that we're regarding is things like depression, anxiety, feelings of worthlessness, or just feeling like you're uncertain about yourself or your life for that matter. Through deep reflective thought about ourselves, we are able to, one, first off, identify the fact that we are suffering. Two, we are able to begin to identify those things or those characteristics, those patterns that are causing us to suffer. This is how we begin to use yoga off of the mat. This chapter reinforces the mental fluctuations in which I spoke about last time. It uses those mental fluctuations as ways to help us sort through a lot of the things that are causing us pain and suffering. It kind of is like you take a look back at yourself. You kind of step outside of yourself and you look from the outside in to kind of figure out what's going on and why you're having all this suffering and pain that you may be experiencing. All right, so let's talk about patterns. So patterns are characteristic. Patterns are characterized as things that are similar, like, and in life, things that have a certain type of an order. And it runs the same way in life. We find ourselves, we get into patterns. Now, the yogic term for patterns is samskaras. So if you hear me use that word, that's what I'm referring to. But yeah, so with patterns, you use the mental fluctuations to try to break those patterns. Patterns tend to be things that have been passed down from generations. These are habits, beliefs, things that have been influenced by our family, by teachers, which would be in our school settings, things that we've been influenced by social media, friends, church settings, you name it. Everything that you have done or learned, these are the things that have molded you to become the person that you are today. Things that have happened in your life. These things are all patterns. And it's up to us to seek the truth so that we can break the way that we react, the way that we deal with the things that we're dealing with. In order for us to be able to break those patterns, we have to be able to first ask ourselves, why did I react the way I did? Most of the time when something happens and we have a reaction to it, we are reacting prior to actually thinking about why we're reacting that way. It's an automatic response. So for instance, if someone cuts you off in your car and you automatically flip them off, or you automatically, yell out a curse word, why are you doing that? Why are you so triggered that you have to do either of those things? Well, it's because that's what you've always done. Can you change that? Yeah, you can. You sure you can. But you may have to work on that. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples that have, been dear to me in my life. And the first one I want to talk about is really simple, real easy. It's kind of cute, fun. You have a new baby and you've got this sweet little baby and the baby's beginning to walk, and the first thing that everybody wants to do is slap on those hard bottom white high top shoes that as soon as the baby kicks you in your feet or kicks your knees, kicks your shins, or somewhere else that you don't want them to kick, well, now you hurting in pain, and guess what? Do the baby really need them on, or is it a pattern? And I'm going to tell you now, it is a pattern. It is a practice. It's a belief that has been passed on from generation to generation. The one truth about the shoe, the truth of it is you start working on your mental fluctuations. The one truth is that, do babies need shoes? Of course a baby needs a shoe. What is the sole purpose of a shoe? The sole purpose of a shoe is to protect your foot if you are, one, outdoors, or if you are in an unsafe surface. But does a baby toddler really need a hard bottom stiff shoe to be able to walk with? That's the question. Now, your verbalization, my verbalization may be two totally different things, but the only truth in this matter is that the baby does not need a shoe to walk. The baby does not need a shoe for the baby's foot to develop. The baby does not need a shoe for their legs and their ankles to develop. The purpose of the shoe is to protect the foot as they walk. So, the pattern in this part is your baby starts walking, the first thing someone slaps a shoe on them. Is that going to cause mental suffering for you? Maybe. Does it have to? No, it doesn't. You can make the choice that your baby's not going to wear the shoe. So that's one way to look at it. The second example that I'm going to use is a newly married couple. And this was something that occurred to me. I was blessed to be raised in the home with my mother and my father, and my siblings were from both my mom and dad. So that is when I grew up, that was what family looked like to me. That was the ideal of what a family was. And I'm very grateful and thankful to have had that as my upbringing. Now, I know that there are many types of families, many different, family setups, and that's not everybody's family. So we all come from different backgrounds, different families, different beliefs, different systems. But when I got married, initially, the only thing that I knew was what I learned in my family's household. There were very definitive gender roles that were played in my family's home. And as I became a married woman, initially, that pattern, those beliefs, those practices that I saw as a child and a young woman, I took those into my marriage. But what I had to realize, and I realized it really quickly, is that because my mom and dad's marriage worked the way it worked, did not mean that the same exact way their marriage worked was going to work for my marriage. And so I had to figure out how me and my husband's marriage was going to run and how it was going to work. And it did take some time. I mean, I figured it out quickly, but that part came quickly. Like, wow, this is not my mom and dad. I'm not my mother. He's not my dad. We don't have the years of experience under the belt to have gotten to that point of the marriage that they have. So that's why when I say, even in this situation, the one truth is that my husband and I are married. We are husband and wife. Everything else, the gender roles, who does this, who does that, all that stuff is all perception. And then we put the verbalizations to write that story after that. So the takeaway that I want to bring from those two stories is that even with those things being minor, we can get so caught up and cause suffering in our lives and the lives of others because we're holding on to the things, the patterns, the beliefs that we have grown to understand based on our previous experiences, but not based on our current situation. So that's why we need to, focus on trying to break those patterns and finding the truth and living our lives the best that we can. So we're not reacting in a way that is common to us, but that we are truly looking at the situation and reacting in a way that makes sense for us in this current state. So just in summary, chapter 2 discusses the importance of us becoming more conscious of our patterns to help break our mental suffering. The purpose of yoga is not for us to erase our patterns, but for us to identify the things that cause our patterns to be what they are and to be able to consciously change the way that we react before we just automatically react and respond to a situation. It's there to help us gain a deeper consciousness of what we are and who we are and what we're doing. As you practice yoga in this manner, you may begin to notice that some of those old patterns or samskaras will fade, and you'll have more new and balanced ones that will present themselves to you. Applying this philosophy on and off the mat, it will allow us to be able to do a little bit of a self-study so that we can find positive changes within ourselves. And once we can have positive changes in ourselves, we can change the environment that's around us. So that is it for today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope you were able to gain some knowledge from this. Stay tuned for my next discussion as I go into a little bit more detail from Chapter 2, Yoga Sutras, Sadhana Pada, as we talk about the 8-limb path of yoga. All right, you all have a great day.